Hello, beautiful citizen of the frozen pond. Welcome to another episode of Hyperdrive Hockey. My name is Max Vanut. I will be riding a solo today for the first few minutes of this episode. Unfortunately, Kevin is badly under the weather, so he will be missed today. I will miss him definitely, having to take care of all the production aspect of this show, but you absolutely do not care about that. I will be joined a bit later on by Avery Lewis McDougall from Game Over Edmonton, Michael Andlauer from Game Over Ottawa. We are brought to you on the Game Over Network. Please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. Drop a like, drop a comment on this episode, even if it's just to say hi, because it helps us with the algorithm. We are, of course, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you catch your podcast in audio format. Just before we head to the story today, let me remind you about our new partner here at Hyperdrive Hockey, a delightfully witchy, gut, and glam jewelry store making handcrafted art that varies from subtle silver and gold pieces to glamorous bespoke pieces in Shoe Bijou. That is INCHOO. It's more than just a company. They have built a community through their advocacy and welcoming attitude. It has made them an institution here in Montreal. Head over to 4000 Rue Saint-Ambroise, Suite, whatever you want to say it, to 78 and say hi to Astrid and the Wicked team, or head over to inshoebijou.com. That is INCHOOBIJOUX.com and enhance your style today. The story today, Drew Doughty is back for the LA Kings. And who is out? Brent Clark. Boy, did I not expect this out of the LA Kings. Of course, Drew Doughty gets back in the lineup. You take Drew Doughty and you put him in the lineup, even at his age. Personally, I really thought that Drew Doughty's injury would impact the Kings way more in a negative matter than it did this season. The LA Kings are surprising me with their season. They're still standing third in the Pacific Division. Things are getting tight. The Vancouver Canucks and the Calgary Flames are not that far behind, but they have been a steady team in the top three of the Pacific Division so far this year. The problem is now, despite Drew Doughty coming back, they lost in regulation on Wednesday night. They are 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. So yeah, they needed help. They needed to push. And of course, Drew Doughty might have to shake off a little bit of rust. I'm honestly surprised he's already back. This is January 13th. I thought it was maybe going to be all the way until the end of February until we saw him. But he is back. He also would like to go to the Four Nations face-off. Quite frankly, he might be the guy I pick if I'm Team Canada, but who knows? He will have a few games to show that he can shake that rust off. But Brent Clark being the guy left off for the LA Kings is actually what has been the story for the last 24 hours. Why? Well, Brent Clark took off this season after an amazing year in the AHL in 2023-2024, his first full professional season. Brent Clark had close to a point per game with the Ontario Reign in the NHL last year. Yes, you heard that right. A defenseman with close to a point per game in his first year in the NHL with 46 points in 50 games. And this year, he really has seized the day. He really went full Avenged Sevenfold with 24 points in 47 game performance for the LA King. His defensive games is honestly quite interesting. He has really improved throughout this season. Yet he is the one being left off. And may I remind you, he's only 21 years old. It is a weird situation for the LA Kings. They have a lot of defensemen under contract. They have a lot of quality defensemen. And they have an embarrassment of riches. They have one of the most beautiful problems in hockey, which is they have too many right shot D. On the left side, they have player like veteran Joel Munson, who honestly is quite surprising for the Kings this season. But you have too many right shot D with Vladislav Gavrikov, Jordan Spence, and now Drew Doughty. So Clark has been the odd man out for this first game back of Drew Doughty. Kings head coach saying that it's a long season for a young player. I'm not sure I buy into that. I mean, Brent Clark played in the OHL. Brent Clark had a full season in the AHL last year. Well, full season. He did only play 50 games, okay. You could argue that he has never played 60 games in the season, even in the OHL. Because when you look at it, the most games he's ever played in the season in the OHL is 57. And that was his first year with the Barrie Colts. Then 55 in 21-22 and 31 in 22-23. So I guess you could make that argument that you usually say about players coming out of the NCAA, because they do have shorter season. I can tell you that here in Montreal, it is a talking point. The fact that from now on, every single game Lane Hudson is going to play this year is the most games he's ever played in the season. Still, it has created quite the frenzy. A lot of people talking about possible trades. What's crazy with the Kings is they had Brock Faber. They drafted Brock Faber in June 2022. They drafted Brock Faber in 2020. And in June 2022, they traded the rights to Brock Faber alongside a first-round pick for Kevin Fiala. The Kings were in a weird situation. They still had NJ Kopitar and Drew Doughty to use huge contract. Kopitar since then is on a new contract that is actually quite a valuable contract for the LA Kings at $7 million a season. But back then he was still a $10 million a year player. And in 2022, they just had made it back to the playoffs after missing them for 3 straight years. So they were kind of in the midst of a reset that was proving to be maybe successful. And they wanted veteran player. And Kevin Fiala has been very good for the LA Kings since arriving in town. But can you imagine? This team had Brent Clark and Brock Faber. They actually drafted them back-to-back years. So Brock Faber in 2020 and Brent Clark, top 10, number 8 pick overall in 2021. And I haven't even mentioned Sean Durzi. You could have one of the best right side on defense in the whole year, in the whole league in a few years, with Faber, Clark, and Durzi. I can't believe, right now, like I said, it's the frenzy. Everybody's talking, could Brent Clark be traded? Could he be an asset for the Kings? I don't think so, because Gavrikov is going to be an unrestricted free agent this season. He is 29 years old. I can't believe Brent Clark is not the defenseman of the future on the right side for the LA Kings. I think this will taper down. I do question, though, what they will do. They are a team in the playoff spot. You cannot afford not having Brent Clark, in my humble opinion, nights in, nights out in your roster, in your lineup. Can Gavrikov be traded immediately? I mean, unless disaster strikes, they're going to be headed to the playoffs. You need a veteran like Gavrikov, but I do think they are going to lose him for nothing as an unrestricted free agent, so it will be interesting to see. But I did not have that on my bingo card, talking about potential Brent Clark trade. The thing about Brent Clark, though, is he could really be used as an amazing chip and bringing something huge in return. But I do believe that you're much better off with him in your lineup for the future than trading him away. Although it could always depend on what the return is. So that will be interesting to see on the LA King standpoint. As I said, the LA Kings are in the midst of a tough stretch right now. They're in danger of slipping out of the top 3 in the Pacific Division. The Vancouver Canucks have won their last 3 games. We will talk about it in a minute. The Calgary Flames, of course, are still out there. So it will be interesting to see what they do there. Never would I have imagined that the return of Drew Doughty would have caused such a stir for the LA Kings, but it is a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have for the Los Angeles Kings. Okay, let's head over to other news across Frozen Planet. Looking for a way to make awesome memories with your friends? Want to take some promotional pictures for your business? Check out Le Saint Motel in Montreal Southwest. It's an amazing selfie studio located in Montreal's historic Château Saint-Ambroise, adjacent to Inchu Bijou. It boasts 12 unique decors for you to enjoy and make memories. Hop in their iconic heart-shaped ball pit or transport yourself back in time to Expo 67. Le Saint Motel can also come to you with mobile decor setups available to rent for events, including setup and takedown. Head to lesaintmotel.com for more detail or to check out their amazing decors that are always being updated. So a lot of news this week across not only the NHL, but, well, I guess the Four Nations face-off is technically the NHL. 3 losses in a row for the Toronto Maple Leafs, scoring only a goal in all 3 games. Only 4 games left for the Leafs before the Four Nations face-off, and it's a Western road trip. The Leafs are not going to play at home for almost a month. Their next home game is on, I was going to say November. No, absolutely not November. February 22. Can't wait to see what will happen for the Leafs if they can shake things off before the pause for the Four Nations, because if they don't, I do think there could be some rumblings in Toronto. The Florida Panthers have just leapfrogged them for first place in the Atlantic. And let's be real here, for most of this season, we have kind of assumed, and I feel rightfully so, that the Florida Panthers and Toronto Maple Leafs will be the top 2 teams in the Atlantic. Unfortunately, the Tampa Bay Lightning, well, unfortunately if you're a fan of those teams, the Tampa Bay Lightning and Boston Bruins are not in the same category as those 2 teams anymore, which they once were. And the Ottawa Senators, I don't feel like they are quite there yet to the point of grabbing one of those 2 spots. But beware, with 7 wins in their last 10 games and Linus Ullmark coming back to the lineup, and if the Leafs have a bad road trip and the Senators conclude their calendar before the Four Nations face-off on a good note, they are 6 points back right now with a game in hand. Who knows? Maybe they get within 2 or 3 points from the Leafs at the Four Nations pause, and maybe we can actually have an interesting battle between those 2 teams. I honestly don't think it will get there. I think the teams are a well-oiled machine by now, that the regular season is just the adventure they have to go through to get themselves in the right playoff spot. But I must confess a thing. With the Ottawa Senators suddenly in 3rd place in the Atlantic, I do kind of wish that the Florida Panthers will win the division and that we will have a Battle of Ontario in the first round. That would be absolutely beautiful to see. Toronto versus Ottawa feels like a million years since we've had it. I don't think I'm wrong if I'm saying that the last time we had this was pre-2004-2005 lockout. You had a couple of good Battle of Ontario for a few years in the playoffs. Of course, the Matt Sundin led Maple Leafs against the early Daniel Alfredson era Ottawa Senators. When I say early, is it's before Danny Eatley and Jason Spezza were really there. It was more Marian Osa, Wade Redden, Zdeno Chara, Patrick Lalime in net. Radek Bonk was there for the Ottawa Senators. So it wasn't quite the team that had gotten to the Stanley Cup final back in 2007 against the Anaheim Ducks. But they were already quite good. And yeah, those playoffs, for those who were there, were absolutely amazing. I would really want to see the Toronto Maple Leafs versus Ottawa Senators first round series. We'll see where we go from there. The Canucks have won 3 in a row amid a crazy statement by President Jim Rutherford, who said this: "I felt like for a long time that there was a solution here because everybody has worked on it, including the parties involved. But it only gets a result for a short period of time and then it festers again. And so it certainly appears like there is not a good solution that would keep this group together." Of course, Jim Rutherford is talking about whatever you want to call the rift between Elias Peterson, first of his name, and JT Miller. JT Miller declined to comment. You know what? I've said here on this podcast before that I do feel like the Canucks should keep Elias Peterson and let JT Miller go, but I do question. You have those 2 players who clearly can't, get through whatever it is that it is between them. Do you really want those players on your team? And even if you're another team in the NHL, do you really want to get one of those players? I don't know. I think it says a lot about the characters of those players. And I've said it here and I'll say it again. It also says a lot about the character of Quinn Hughes, who's amid all this is having the season of his career. The Canucks have won their last 3 games. As I've said, they're now back in a playoff spot. They're 4 points back from the Colorado Avalanche, who are first wild card. And the Colorado Avalanche have played 2 more games than the Canucks. They're actually closer to the 3rd place in the Pacific, the LA Kings. The Kings, though, have 2 games in hand on the Canucks. If Thatcher Demko can keep his groove, and if the team, most importantly, can finally find a way to win games at home, I remind you that they are 9, 10, and 6 at home this season. Maybe they can turn things around. Crazy things about the Vancouver Canucks is the amount of win they have. They are really saved right now by the OT point. They have more overtime losses than anybody in the league with 10. So imagine, you take those out, like just 5 of those out. But yeah, you know what? In French, we have a saying that with ifs, I have absolutely no idea how to translate that saying in English, but basically, with ifs, you can do whatever you want, is what it says, vaguely. So they have those, and they can figure their thing out. I can't wait to see. I feel like this is the longest soap in the NHL this season. Can't wait for it to be over, especially for you Canucks fan out there. Utah Hockey Club might be here to stay. Well, of course, the organization is here to stay. It has just arrived, but I mean the name. So the team has proposed 3 final names, and fans will vote on it. And what for a long time felt like the favorite, the Yeti, is not there because of a legal battle. Well, not a battle, but they couldn't get the copyright to the name because, the brand Yeti that does amazing, yet extremely expensive coolers and other isolated thermo stuff. Well, apparently it could lead to some confusion. So the Yeti isn't there. So HC could actually stay. The Mammoth is there, and the Wasatch. Please let me know if I'm pronouncing this in the correct way. It's absolutely a disaster to pronounce for a French francophone. The Wasatch. What is a Wasatch? It's the mountain range in the region of Salt Lake City. Once I read that, what I thought was an absolutely horrendous name, I think could be quite interesting, but I don't know. I feel like going straight up Wasatch when you have the Colorado Avalanche right next to you. I'm not sure about it. I actually don't mind the HC, to be honest. Every team that had to switch to a generic name like this in professional sport, in North American professional sport these past few years, I'm excluding soccer, of course, because it is really into the culture of the sport. It was just temporary. So I'm, of course, thinking of the Commanders, which went by the football club for a while. The Elks, of course, went also by the football club for a while, ending up choosing a name. Personally, I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of the European way of doing things and maybe having a moniker. But I got to be honest with you, I would go Mammoth. On it. I think it could be more interesting. It could bring more of a sentiment of pride and, a rallying symbol for the team. But I'm not quite against having the name HC stick for a while. Anyways, let me know in the comment, what do you think the name should be? Some Four Nations team captains have been named. So Finland and Sweden at the moment we are recording. Both of them have been dropped this morning of Thursday, January 13th. So maybe we're going to get the Team USA and Team Canada later on in the day. But just know that at the moment we do not have it. So without absolutely no surprise, Alexander Barkov will captain Team Finland. Sebastian Aho, Mikko Rantanen, and Mikael Granlund will assist him. Barkov became the first Finnish captain to win the Stanley Cup last year. And for Sweden, well, Victor Hedman, also not a surprise as far as I'm concerned, will captain the team. Erik Karlsson and Matthias Ekholm will assist him alongside Willie Nylander. That is a bit of a surprise, but the veteran defenseman group leading the way for Team Sweden. Just before we head to our Not Even Sorry segment with Michael and Avery, just a quick word on Marc-André Fleury's last game. Probable. I mean, he has said he's retiring at the end of the year, so unless those two teams play each other in the Stanley Cup Finals, which would be absolutely nuts, the Thursday night will be the last time for Marc-André Fleury in Bell Center. And to me, it really is the end of an era. It really is the end of the era of greatness, the goaltending greatness from here, from La Belle Province. It started, of course, all the way back in the 80s with Patrick Roy. Patrick Roy inspired so many others. And then you had the Martin Brodeur, de Jean-Sébastien Giguère, de Roberto Luongo, de Marc-André Fleury, and so on. Jocelyn Thibault. I could name dozens of them. If you were like me, a Québécois being raised in the 90s, it felt like most starting goalies in the league were from here, and it was amazing. And I was a young goalie, and it was amazing to see. It was very inspiring. And unfortunately, it has dried up for many reasons. And I am sad. I'm actually quite sad. Marc-André Fleury is my favorite player of all time. And not only his playing style, that is incredibly old school and spectacular, which gives heart attack to coaches and teammates, but is so exciting for fans. But most importantly, the smile and the love of the game. Marc-André Fleury never lost that childish passion for the game, whether it's in practice, whether it's in game. He always, is up to mischief in a funny way. He is completely amazing. He is also, to me, a great example of devotion and perseverance, losing his starting job at some times in his career, but always fighting back. It's crazy to think he was drafted first overall all the way back in 2003 in an absolutely stacked draft, probably the best draft of the 21st century so far. I'm going to drop the probably, because I was going to say that maybe 2015 is something to say about it, but I still think, despite Connor McDavid's greatness, that 2003 is still the year to go by. Anyways, it's very bittersweet for Quebec fans tonight to see Marc-André Fleury playing for the last time, and he is getting the start, thankfully. Will be really beautiful to see. And the Minnesota Wild have lost Kirill Kaprizov, unfortunately, to an injury. Kirill Kaprizov, who was way up there in the hard discussion so far this season. Can't wait to see how much the Wild can hold on while he is not there, because I absolutely want to see the Minnesota Wild in the playoff this year for the last season of Marc-André Fleury, even if he would probably mostly ride the bench in a playoff run. Okay, this is it for the news and the stories around Planet Hockey today. Now, let's welcome Michael and Avery for our Not Even Sorry segment. And we are now very happy to be joined by Avery Lewis McDougall of Game Over Edmonton and Michael Czar from Game Over Ottawa. Michael went all in with a beautiful Reverse Retro 2.0 jersey, and Avery, who always puts us to shame because he's always the sharpest dressed man in the room. Gentlemen, Avery, how are you doing?
Good, I'm doing well. Great? Doing very well.
Amazing. Well, you know what? The Ottawa Senators are actually doing good, and the Edmonton Oilers have Connor McDavid back, so you guys should have reasons to be happy. Of course, if you're a regular of the show, you are familiar now with our Not Even Sorry segment. We will either throw under the bus, uplift, and then we will debate if debate there is, and we will not apologize for it because, well, we are Canadian, but here we're dropping the mitts, like through hockey players. Avery, I want to start with you today because I thought that was quite interesting because you sent me the two of you sent me statement today and you had me do some homework because I had completely missed what that talk was about. And Avery, tell us, are you throwing under the bus or uplifting today?
So I'm throwing under the bus the idea that Evan Bouchard should be traded. That to me is absurd. This is a defenseman who is third in the team in scoring. Not just third in D-man scoring Oilers, third on the team in scoring, period. Only McDavid and Draisaitl have more points than Bouchard. And in an NHL where teams are dying to have a right shot D-man, you want to trade this guy? The idea he should be dealt over miscues. I mean, yes, Evan Bouchard has had more of a down year defensively, but offensively, he's made up for it in strides. He's a 25-year-old D-man who will figure it out more and more, who will get better. He is someone who Mattias Ekholm has praised his game. Ekholm has said himself to me in the room. Ekholm told me that Bouchard has made him better as a defenseman. And people want to trade that guy? If you trade Evan Bouchard, you are losing that deal every single time. Because guess what? More than likely, you won't get a player like him back in the deal. You won't get him back in the deal. So trading Bouchard is dumb.
Let me ask you this, Avery. If we are talking strictly, actually, let me rephrase that. Are the only reason this is brought up is monetary? Because we all know the albatross in the room is Darnell Nurse's contract, who makes upward of $9 million a year. I have absolutely nothing against Darnell Nurse. He's a good second pair defenseman, but he is making Kel McCarr money. That is the problem. So is, in a way, Evan Bouchard a bit of a victim of the Darnell Nurse situation here? And is it the only reason we're talking about this? Because, I mean, he's that type of offensive defenseman who you are willing to deal with maybe some defensive problem with him, because what he brings on the other side of the ice is so beautiful and is so great for the team. But if there was no salary cap, would that even be a discussion?
Yeah, no, of course it was an uncapped league like it was 25 years ago. Of course it would not be an issue. But yeah, and that really goes back to the issues when it came to the era of Ken Holland, when Ken Holland gave Darnell Nurse that 9.25 deal. So yeah, it does have the impact now in terms of what Bouchard makes and what he most likely will make, as Bouchard is an RFA end of the year. So yeah, it does have an impact. But it's funny, you mentioned the defensive side, Max. Actually, last year, if you look at the defensive metric last year, when it came to Oiler pairings, the pairing that allowed the least amount of high danger goals last season, who was it? Bouchard and Ekholm.
Yeah, having a Matthias Ekholm, and that's the thing, they have him. So I'm not the biggest Evan Bouchard fan, but I don't think you let that type of man walk. And you've said it. He's an RFA at the end of the season. He is not a UFA. So that will be interesting to see, because him being RFA, you're not quite in the Mikko Rantanen situation that the Colorado Avalanche were. Mikko Rantanen becoming a UFA at the end of the season, if you were going to lose him for absolutely nothing, that was going to be a problem. But let's even take the worst case scenario, Avery. If a team came with an offer sheet for Evan Bouchard, it would be a huge offer sheet, because let's remind people, a player has no obligation to accept an offer sheet. So if a team comes with an offer sheet that Evan Bouchard accepts, we know it will be an offer sheet probably upward of $9 million. And then the Oilers, if they choose not to match, would get a plethora of first-round picks and second-round pick. So it's not quite that bad of a situation just yet for the Oilers. But I do agree with you, Avery. I'm not going to debate here. To me, you have that type of player, you need to find a way to keep him, especially it's not the same situation again as Colorado, where it's a forward and you would already have Draisaitl and McDavid. You don't. You have an Evan Bouchard. You keep it. Mike, what do you do of this? Do you think that the Oilers absolutely need to keep Evan Bouchard?
I'm just going to be very uncontroversial and say yeah. I'm not sure what else to say. Man. As someone who knows what it's like to have a team with not much talent on the right-hand side, I think you should keep Evan Bouchard, I think you should keep your top right-handed defenseman, who is on a very, very good pair with Matthias Ekholm. I feel like out of all the things on the Oilers, again, coming from a person who's not watching them probably as often as Avery is, but someone who's, following the Oilers from an outside perspective, seeing their run in the Stanley Cup playoffs last year, Evan Bouchard is not even close to one of your problems. Yes, he does have his weaknesses, kind of as you mentioned, defensively, he probably isn't as good as he can be or should be. But if there's one thing about the Oilers that I feel like is one of their biggest strengths is their offense, right? You have McDavid, you have Draisaitl, and then you have an offensive defenseman like Bouchard who can keep up with him, not only points-wise, but work on the same page. And it's led to success before, not winning a cup, but winning the division, obviously, right? So as in in the playoffs, reaching, the Stanley Cup finals. So again, I feel like the biggest problem, as we've all talked about financially, is Darnell Nurse. But I feel like if there's one thing that you should do with Bouchard is you work around him. Whatever he wants, you give him. And even though it might be tough to work out contract-wise, you have to keep him on the team, considering that not only is he good, as in he puts up points and he's a steady offensive defenseman for the team, but also it's proven to work. This is not one of those situations where if the Oilers hadn't reached the finals last year, this was probably a more heated discussion, because then you could probably argue a little bit of Bouchard, has he proven himself in the playoffs yet? But he has. So this isn't a situation of, is he a question mark that we have to debate about? No, he's a young offensive defenseman who still has time to grow, and he's proven himself. I feel like you have to work around him. And if anything, you just have a lot of other contracts on the Oilers you might want to talk about first. Some of their offseason signings, Skinner's kind of looked okay at best. It looks like this is from a guy who's reading stats and not watching the games. But some of these offseason signings that everyone really hyped up is in okay, the Oilers look so much better than they did last year. They're not, popping off the page like we thought they would. But Bouchard is not even in your top 5 of people you should even think about trading away from the team.
Let me not be devil's advocate here because as I said, I agree with Avery, but let me ask you a question, Avery, on this. How much can Connor McDavid, how do I phrase this? How much can Connor McDavid help the Oilers here? Because we all know Leon Draisaitl's money is almost doubling next year, going from one of the greatest contract in the league, barely over $8 million to $14 million a year. So you have that coming on the books. And then the year after, Connor McDavid is up for a new contract. To me, when Leon Draisaitl signed with the Oilers, that was the sign that McDavid too would stay in Edmonton. I do not see how Leon Draisaitl, I could be completely wrong here, but I do not, those guys are two amigos. They really, I think they want to win together. I think Connor McDavid knows what the narrative would be around him if he left Edmonton without winning a Stanley Cup. So I do think he stays. And contrary to Leon Draisaitl, who, like I said, had been probably the biggest discount in the league since McKinnon wasn't a discount anymore, Connor McDavid has made his money. Well, you could argue all of those men have made their money, but from a purely NHL standpoint, Connor McDavid has made his money. Connor McDavid is the face of the league. He makes a ton of money. You know, he's not making soccer player, football player, basketball player money in sponsorship, but he does great money. I'm pretty damn sure the Golden Arch, that I'm not going to name because they're not a sponsor of this show, gave good money to Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews for that kind of good commercial, I must say. Anyways, all this to say, I mean, Connor McDavid is not going to sign for $10 million. But what if he keeps a similar contract? What if he goes the Crosby route and says, hey, put me up for the same amount of money, which, with the cap going up, would become an amazing deal for the Edmonton Oilers. And I do think that that would help him keep some teammates, get a better and more competitive team. You are there in Edmonton. Do you think it is something that Connor McDavid could do? And do you think it could solve some, not all, but some of the cap issues for the Oilers if he goes the Crosby route and doesn't, you know, get a higher salary for his next contract?
Now, Connor's a guy who, yes, he does want to win a cup, and I know that it burns. Losing in Game 7, that burned him. I mean, we saw on Face-Off how he didn't care about winning contract. He didn't care about that. He didn't give a crap about that trophy. He wanted the Stanley Cup. So, yes, he's a guy who does want to put winning above virtually everything else. But I'm not sure if he does want to sacrifice his bank account to do it. I'm not sure if he's going to say, hey, I'll take less. So I do still think him and his agency do say we want this guy to get paid. So it may not be a level of he's getting more than Leon, but I do think he will take a lot of money when his cap goes up. I do think he'll still be in that range of maybe $11-12 million. But we got to see, because at the end of the day, Connor wants to win a cup. So we got to see what he does want to decide to do in a year or two here. So we'll see.
Interesting to see. Connor McDavid makes $12.5 million a year right now. He will be a free agent at the end of the next season. Can he be the first $15 million a year man? Can he be the first 60? With the cap going up, we don't know. Maybe he'll be the first $20 million a year man. Who knows in the NHL? Michael, you too kind of surprised me, and you had me do some homework when you sent me your statement because, well, I'll say why in a few seconds. Are you throwing under the bus or are you uplifting?
I'm also throwing under the bus, so it's going to be a pretty negative.
It's a beautiful day here in Montreal, and I can see where you are. It's a beautiful day too, Michael. Yeah, what the heck is going on, my man?
And that's kind of, in a weird way, if you really want to settle it down to its core, that's what it should be, right? But then the Ottawa Senators decided to do, and this is the way that the way that I'm putting it down. Michael Andlauer made his first big mistake as the owner of the Ottawa Senators. That's my topic. That's my take. And for those who aren't fully aware of the context here, the Sens decided to do something where they're partnering with the Videotron Center in Quebec City, and they announced it on Twitter, social platforms, on their announcements. And while the announcement in itself is that they're playing some preseason games next year at the Videotron Center where the Nordiques used to play, and you can tell they're really trying to cater to former Nordiques fans and try and get them to join the Sens. Now, the problem is the fact that in casual conversation, Michael Andlauer says that, playing some home games in Quebec might be a nice thing to do. Like, not preseason, like we're talking regular season home games away from Ottawa might be a cool idea. And on top of that, they had the multiple images of Sparta Cat wearing the split Sens jersey, where it's half Sens, half Nordiques. And that got the fans riled up, and I think deservedly so, because if there's one thing that the Sens have been really kind of, the fan base has been really skittish of in the past like 5-6 years under a previous ownership, it was the idea of the Sens going away from us, right? And one of the places that was specifically mentioned was Quebec City. So now you have the new owner, while the Sens are doing the best they've done in almost 10 years, in the middle of this great run where all the focus should be on how good the team is doing, especially defensively, which is the biggest kind of change that the Sens have had in their playing style. And then they just they fall on their face. They just make sure that the PR around this thing is not the Sens are doing good. It's, hey, look, half this jersey of your jersey is a different organization. And even better, your owner is talking about playing home games away from Ottawa. And I just think it's not something that is breaking, it's not breaking the fan base. It's just making them feel that same kind of tension and unnecessary stress that we felt whenever we were under that previous ownership.
I understand.
And I just think it's a PR fumble. And I just feel so bad because the Sens are playing good. So I should be happy. It's a nice day outside. It should be good. But they fell on their face here. And
you know what? I'm actually going to play. I'm actually going to play devil's advocate here, just for fun, just so we have a little bit of fun here. So when you send me your statement, I was like, wait a minute, what did I miss? I felt like that was a good announcement because I went full Quebecer on this. So if you're not familiar with this, the LA Kings last year played some preseason games in Quebec City, and it was extremely, I don't have strong enough of a word to tell you how controversial that was, because our provincial government invested money into this. They gave money to the Kings for them to come play some preseason games in Quebec City. And so when I saw the news, I did like probably most Quebecers did. I opened the article. I was like, oh, good. No public money on this. Cool. Thumbs up. Yeah, cool. Come play some preseason game, Ottawa. We like it. And then I went on with my day. Didn't go deeper than this. So you sent me this, and I'm like, wait.
That's how it should have been.
And so I went and saw the pic. It was Sparta Cat, my man. What did you do? And I saw that the team president had to go on a radio in Ottawa to temper the things. So I do understand when you say that there is a fumbling of the ball from a fan perspective. And I understand it, and I understand why Sens fans feel that way, and they are right to feel that way. Okay. But let me ask you, let me just plant a seed here. The Ottawa Senators are trying to build, rightfully so, an arena downtown Ottawa. Going to whatever it is called now, because it's changed name 10 times since I've been a kid. Canadian Center? Canadian Tire Center?
Canadian Tire Center is what it is now, but like the place they're trying to go to is LeBreton Flats.
Yeah, so Canadian Center, Tire Center, it's far, it's tough to go to and all that. It's barely in Ottawa. They need to go to downtown, and because the field that they're trying to buy right now is government owned at the moment, it's taking time. If you've had to deal with, like bureaucracy and all that, it takes time. And what if Michael Andlauer was just trying to speed the process a bit here, and maybe, he rubbed some feathers the wrong way, but what if he's just trying to speed the process up here?
That's what everyone's kind of theorizing, and Cyril Leader shut that down pretty quick. I know that whenever he was talking about the thing on TSN 1200, he said this was in the planning for weeks, and it was just earlier this week where the NCC announced that LeBreton Flats, like, they gave a little update on it. And while it's still potentially possible that this was used kind of as a little bit of a reminder to the NCC as of like, hey, we might play games elsewhere, I feel like the fans are just not, I don't care whether you're using this as a chip to get that arena in downtown faster. Trust me, I want the arena in downtown too. This isn't a debate on like, we want the arena downtown or not. Yes, the answer is yes. But it's very much an element too of like, don't even for a second imply to have the Sens play anywhere else. That's why we're so skittish. That's why all the Sens fans were so in arms over this. Because over the past couple of years, we've had other fan bases. I don't think Edmonton's one of them, so Avery, you're good. But we've had other fan bases very much joke about the Sens being, oh, you're the next team that's going to move. You're the next, you're the next Nordiques in that sense. You're going to be the next team that's going to be going somewhere else because your fans aren't showing up, which just isn't true. We were in a poor circumstance, and there were a lot of good reasons as to why fans weren't showing up. And now the team's doing better. Our attendance is just not a conversation anymore. It's not something you hear people talking about, like, oh, the Sens are doing. No, like we're playing good and our attendance is doing fine. We wanted a well-run organization. And then immediately, while our run has been good so far with this new ownership, there's been a lot of great things, especially their focus on the Francophone fans that have been neglected in Gatineau specifically. Like, that's one thing I will always give credit, and I can see why they want to do this, because they still want to cater to those Francophone fans. But then it's that constant thing of focus on Ottawa first. You already have enough troubles in Ottawa on its own because you have so many like familial rooted Habs fans and Leafs fans in the area. So, and you're trying to convert those sons of Habs fans or daughters of Habs fans or Leafs fans into Sens fans. That's already one thing you guys are struggling with. And you want to cater to your Francophone fans here in the Ottawa-Gatineau region. I'm not sure why then you would go to an area, not even like Montreal, where it's 2 hours away, like it's 4 hours away, and you try to cater to fans of Nordiques who were most recently playing in 1994. So the fans of those of that fan base are probably in their 50s at this point. Like, there's a lot of confusion there. I understand the reasoning, because it's like you can get TV deals, obviously, in Quebec, and the Maritimes matter. That's what Cyril Leader obviously mentioned in his article as well. But it's just confusing to me. Like I get what they're trying to do, and I'm not against it, but you got to focus on like building from the inside out. That's more so my argument. And not to mention, if this was announced with no Spartacat split jersey, that on its own would have made it so much like less.
Spartacat made it a hell of an.
It's not even his fault too. I feel bad for the guy. As a kid who loved the mascot, I just feel bad for like him having to wear that thing.
I would be very surprised if the person behind the mascot was the one with the idea. Some higher up with a bigger salary had the idea. But all jokes aside,
confirmed it.
Avery, the Calgary Flames, I know it's a bit more south from you, but are looking for another arena. And I don't think the Flames have ever really been in danger of moving, but there has been, so those type of pressures that have been made for a new arena in Calgary too these past few years. And let's be real, Winnipeg is having tough times with crowd and with the economy, with the dollar being weak at the moment, the Canadian dollar. There are fears across Canada for the hockey teams, ain't there?
Well, actually, I'll jump in on that, Max. If you go back to, say, in the late 90s, there was rumor that the Flames might have moved back in like 1999, back when the Oilers almost moved to Houston, Texas. That was the era where you go back to like the late 90s. Edmonton nearly moved, Calgary nearly moved. So yeah, those teams were in danger of moving back when the Canadian dollar was at like 14 cents to the American back in the 90s. So, but Calgary's arena is sorted out. They will be getting a new arena in time for 2027, 2028. But I see Michael saying, though, like with Ottawa, I like the idea of playing games in Quebec City for I love the idea of playing like 2 games there, but to tease even unintentionally the idea of a relocation, that is something that was a major misstep from ownership. You can't even imply or put in people's mind the idea of a possible relocation with what's going on right now. It's a bad issue, especially in Ottawa. This is a market where if you even go cross sport, this is a market that beforehand, generations ago, lost a football team. The Rough Riders moved years ago or folded years ago. I have rumors of relocation to Shreveport. So this is a market in which you got to be careful with trying to imply or even teasing that playing 2 games in Quebec City, cool. But like you mentioned, the Spartacat thing, the whole implying unintentionally, a major misstep. But credit to Team PR for immediately saying, no, there's no moving. We're not moving at all. It was an accident. The fact that they got ahead of this and apologized immediately was a great play by the Senators PR team in my mind, I do think as well.
And just to say one more thing quickly, I don't think we have to talk about this too much more after this, but one thing I will very much give credit to with the Sens here is they owned up to their mistake, and they very much understood what the problem was. They said sorry, and they're moving on. I just hope this doesn't affect the team on the ice. I don't think it will. Not too long after this, even though this has almost nothing to do, this might not be a guarantee, but they posted a TikTok of the Sens skating on the canal, and just like, you could tell that the vibes around the Sens team are still good. This isn't a situation where like this is causing issues that are seeping in the team, at least not that we've seen. the team seems to be in a good mood after this. I'm sure like Shabbat kind of saw it as a bit of a joke when he mentioned in a press conference afterwards. He's just like, oh man, I feel bad for Spartacat. He didn't, he probably got forced to do it from the people up top. So I'm glad that from what I can see, it's not affecting the team. Obviously, we'll wait and see until the games are played. If there's some other issues that might have lingered from this, but this is a minor misstep, thankfully. But I just really hope this is not like the first domino in a set of dominoes that could lead to something else. And not to mention, as a Sen, I've seen that moment before of the first domino leading to multiple dominoes that cause some sort of bigger issue down the line. I just hope that it's different this time around, obviously with new ownership and with the team actually playing good. So nice to be able to talk to other people about the Sens playing good. It's so satisfying.
I mean, we saw last year with the Coyotes. They're playing well. The Utah news came out. They lost 13 straight games because the Coyotes ownership didn't get ahead of it. They let it leak. They're relocating. They didn't get ahead of it. They let it leak. Bill Armstrong came to Edmonton to tell the players they are moving. Ownership didn't tell the players. Ownership did not tell the players they were relocating to Utah at all.
Yeah. André Tourini said it on the French radio here in Montreal, how much it affected the team. He confirmed it, how much it affected the team. You are very right. It's a very good point, Avery. And unlike Austin Matthews' best friend, Justin Bieber, it was not too late to say sorry for the Ottawa Senators ownership. You know what? I'm going to throw a bit of uplifting just to close this segment in this show today. I just wanted to uplift the PWHL here because we learned this week that the PWHL's assistants are up 30% from an already successful first season. And you know what, Canada fans, kudos to you, because the 3 Canadians team have drawn 37,000 more fans than the US one. The takeover tour has been a big success, particularly in Vancouver and Quebec City, who the attendance were 19,000 in Vancouver, 18,000 in Quebec City. So kudos to the fans. I don't know about you guys, but first seasons, because I've heard a lot. I've talked a lot about the PWHL. I went to 2 games first year. Unfortunately, I haven't had the chance to go this year, but I do plan to go at the very least to the Bell Center games in a few weeks here in Montreal. And I kept hearing the first year, how do I stay polite on this? Let's say naysayers. Let's just say naysayers that, it's because it's new, it's going to drop after a year, and it's going to be a flop. Number one, why do you wish it to flop? Come on, man. Just say it. Come on, say it. Yeah, that's what I thought. And it hasn't happened. It hasn't happened. It's completely amazing. And I do hope that the league will remember, because they are going to expand most probably in the fall. I do hope they remember that the Canadian market, just like in the NHL, are carrying this league right now. And I do hope that if they go to, let's say, 8 teams to start, that it will be split evenly. A team in Canada at the very least, and the team in the US. I know I'm from Montreal, but I'm going to be honest here. I do hope they go out west. I hope they go out west because we have a team in Montreal, and maybe some people from Eastern Quebec are going to be mad at me for saying this, but I do believe that, is it Alberta? Is it Vancouver? I do not know, but I do believe that the west of Canada deserves a team before Quebec City. I say this with respect. It's purely from a business perspective. I know that Quebec City wants a team and deserves one at a certain point. But Avery out west, I do believe you guys deserve a team.
You know, I would say with a Western team, it should be Western teams plural. It should be Western Conference first. And also, if you have
a very valid point.
If you're gonna expand west, I want to make sure it happens when players are not flying commercial anymore. Because it would be very tough to have, say, an Edmonton team, a Vancouver team, a Calgary team flying commercial to play teams in Toronto, Quebec, Minnesota. If you're going to expand west, make it a Western Conference, have Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle in there, and Winnipeg. And have a whole conference first.
That's a very, very good point that you are bringing. My only question with this, it's, I think that one of the keys to the success for this development is not getting ahead of themselves, both in number of teams, but also, what a league like this creates is young girls wanting to play the sport, and the quality of play would only be elevated. I do not want to see the league in a situation. Obviously, all three of us here were too young. Even my dad might start to be. No, he's not too young to remember it. You know, when they went from 6 to 12 teams in the NHL, and that's what they did. Basically, you had the original 6 in the East, and suddenly you had 6 teams out West. And it was literally the new teams' conferences. And so for a few years, it was either Montreal or Boston against the St. Louis Blues. Mm-hmm. And everybody knew back then that the Stanley Cup final was actually the semifinals. And that's actually what happened for a few years. I think there were like 4 years in a row where the Stanley Cup finals were a sweep because Montreal and Boston came in against those new teams, and it was just like, yeah. Oof. So they would have to carefully do it, but Avery, that is a very, very valid point. Also, in the uplifting, you mentioned charter flights, but players themselves have mentioned that their quality of workspace has already improved over from year one to year two, whether it's meal, prep, treatment, and even nannies for the mothers. Bravo. Bravissimo. And of course, Michael, you have the Ottawa Charge, which Montreal beat on Wednesday night.
Yeah, just unfortunately.
Bring that up. But it's cool that they did go to Ottawa for a market, creating a triple rivalry from the 3 team in the East. And Ottawa's been a friend. You know what? Actually, Ottawa's had the biggest crowd so far this season with 11K. Well,
I was going to say
home crowd, not including the tour.
Yes, not including the tour, but in terms of home crowds, Ottawa's been great. And I feel like part of it's just because Ottawa's had this kind of weird situation where we don't have many big attractions. Really, like, to be frank, like, we have the Sens, we have the Red Blacks, but it's really just those two. And yes, we have also a basketball team, I believe, as well as Atletico Ottawa. But when it comes to sport, like, there are a lot of sports teams that people want to follow and want to be a fan of, and it just sucks that a lot of the time it has to be like we have to travel somewhere else. We have to either go to Ottawa, go to Toronto, go to Montreal. And the fact that we have a PWHL team, you can just see the fans in Ottawa that are like, they really want to be part of that community. And I feel like the PWHL and Ottawa was that perfect mix of like a city really wanting to support a team and a team finding a good market. It was really a perfect match between the two. And obviously I want to uplift and also kind of add on to what Avery said. It's clear that their design whenever they started the league was to kind of almost build this nice, concise area in the States and Canada.
And it was smart.
Everyone can play together. And yes, you're missing some teams. Yes, a team had to be moved. But the whole idea is that it'll make transport really easy. And then that way, whenever you eventually do grow, you can build out. And yeah, I completely agree with, like, I do want to see more Western teams, but I don't want it to be one of those situations where it's kind of like Seattle was in baseball back in the day, where you have all the baseball teams and then you have Seattle. Like, it's just going there is just so tough in comparison to the rest of the league. So I don't want it to be like that, because I imagine that only make playing there even harder for the players. I can only imagine how tough it was to play back in the day for Seattle, where it's like, okay, so you live quite literally on the other side of the country from everything. So you're kind of on your own. And especially for younger players where living on your own is more pressure. It's more of like, it's more on your mind than someone who's older and more, familiar with traveling and living on their own. So, yeah, I completely agree where it's like, if you're going to get a Western team in, it's probably better you do it in a bunch as opposed to one at a time. Or I could kind of see if you add Winnipeg or some of the more central teams in, where it's like we can manage transport to the central areas a little better than from
Minnesota's
the east all
in
the way
that
to the
situation,
west.
actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Minnesota, for example. And so I just think that it's great to see the success of the PWHL. I still have yet to go to a Charge game. That's more to do with my income than it is with my support. I really am excited to go see, not to mention that I love the venue there. TD Place, which is where the Red Blacks play, and now also the Ottawa Charge play. That area, the Lansdowne Park area in Ottawa, is an amazing place to go to. I'm actually probably going there later today to watch a movie because they have a great Cineplex there. So that's a great venue. It's a great location. And it's also a great little, to bring the topic back to Ottawa, the Sens. It's a great kind of almost reminder of what it's like to have that centralized arena. And having, like, I guarantee you part of the reason why so many fans are turning up to the Charge games is because the arena is easily accessible. It's downtown. It's in a popular area where it's very easy to get to and get home from. So I love that, and I can't wait to see the league expand. Although I I will agree that Western Conference, maybe we wait until everyone in the Western Conference can join, not just one or two teams.
If you build it, they will come. I guess that would be the closing statement of this segment today. Avery Lewis McDougall from Game Over Edmonton, thank you so much for joining the show. Make sure to catch Game Over Edmonton. Michael Czar from Game Over Ottawa, thank you so much too for joining in today. Make sure you catch an Ottawa Senators game, hopefully in Ottawa. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your hockey games. And Kevin will be back on Monday, hopefully healthy. And make sure to follow Game Over Network on YouTube. Drop a like, drop a comment. Let us know about anything that you thought about in this segment. And make sure to follow Game Over Network in your local market. Have a very good weekend. And we'll talk to you on the next episode of Hyperdrive Hockey.